In 1980, a Toyota Corolla cost around $7,000. Basic, reliable, forgettable. That same year, a Volkswagen Golf cost roughly the same, but engineers in Wolfsburg were dreaming bigger. Turbocharged engines, advanced electronics. They wanted to build a car that wouldn't just transport you, it would impress you. Fast forward 40 years. Toyota is the most profitable automaker on Earth. The Volkswagen Group has become the largest by volume, owning 12 brands spanning continents. But profit? That's a different story. One company built an empire on restraint. The other built its empire on ambition. One made billions by saying no. The other risked everything by saying yes. This isn't about which cars are better. It's about two fundamentally different answers to the same question. What should a car company be? The answer to that question determines everything. How you design, how you manufacture, how you expand, how you survive. After all, the Japanese didn't get rich by accident. The Germans didn't stumble into risk either. Both made deliberate choices. Deliberate choices. These choices were rooted in culture, history, and philosophy. This is the story of why those choices matter. To understand why Japanese and German automakers behave so differently today, it helps to know where they came from. Japan rebuilt its economy from the ground up after World War II. Resources were scarce, capital was limited. There was no room for waste. Every yen mattered. Every material had to be justified. This scarcity bred discipline. Japanese manufacturers learned to do more with less. They studied American production methods and refined them. They systematically eliminated waste. They called this process Kaizen, or continuous improvement. Small steps, relentless focus, no dramatic leaps. They made constant, incremental progress toward efficiency. Germany, on the other hand, rebuilt on a different foundation. Engineering excellence, precision, craftsmanship. The Autobahn became a symbol of freedom and technical prowess. German cars weren't just a means of transportation, they were a statement. Mercedes, BMW, Porsche. These weren't brands, they were achievements. And Volkswagen? Volkswagen had a mission, the people's car, affordable motoring for the masses. But even that mission was ambitious. They wanted to bring German engineering to everyone. Two nations, two philosophies. Both were successful. However, they were fundamentally different in what they valued. Japan valued survival through efficiency. Germany valued dominance through excellence. Toyota didn't invent the car. In fact, they weren't even early to the game. But they did something that others didn't. They made discipline their competitive advantage. In the 1950s, Taiichi Ohno walked the factory floors and saw waste everywhere. Workers were waiting, parts were piling up, there was overproduction. He asked a simple question: what if we only made what was needed exactly when it was needed? This became the Toyota production system: lean manufacturing, just-in-time delivery. Every process was scrutinized, every inefficiency was eliminated. But this philosophy wasn't just about the factory floor. It was a philosophy that seeped into every decision. When Toyota designed cars, they didn't pursue innovation for its own sake. They asked, does this add value for the customer? Does this improve reliability? Does this reduce costs? If the answer was no to any of these questions, they didn't do it. This meant that Toyota cars were often accused of being boring, conventional, behind the curve, and they were, by design. While competitors rushed to add new features and technology, Toyota waited. They watched. They learned from others' mistakes. Then, when the technology was proven reliable and cost-effective, Toyota adopted it. This wasn't cowardice, it was patience. Patience is profitable. Every new feature is a risk. It could fail, it can break, it can lead to warranty claims, recalls, and damage to your reputation. Complexity is expensive. This is true not just for design, but also for manufacturing, servicing, and supporting. Toyota avoided that trap. They built cars that started every morning, cars that ran for 300,000 miles, cars that cost little to maintain, cars that held their value. Boring? Maybe, but profitable? Absolutely. After all, customers don't buy cars every year. They buy them every 5, 7, 10 years. And when it's time to replace that car, what do they remember? They remember whether it broke down, whether it cost them money, whether it gave them peace of mind. Toyota became synonymous with reliability, and reliability became their currency. German automakers took a different path. For them, a car was never just a tool. It was an expression of capability, of mastery, of what human engineering could achieve when pushed to its limits. BMW didn't want to build a good sedan. They wanted to build the ultimate driving machine. Mercedes didn't want to build a safe car. They wanted to invent safety itself. Porsche didn't want to build a sports car. They wanted to build the perfect sports car. This ambition created extraordinary vehicles, innovations that changed the industry: anti-lock brakes, fuel injection, turbocharging, advanced aerodynamics. These weren't marketing gimmicks, they were genuine engineering breakthroughs. But ambition has a cost. Every innovation requires research, development, testing, specialized components, skilled labor. When you push the boundaries, you accept higher complexity, and complexity means higher manufacturing costs, more potential failure points, more expensive repairs. German cars became known for their performance, their refinement, their status, but they also became known for something else: expensive maintenance, frequent repairs after warranty, depreciation. Because while German engineers were optimizing for performance, Japanese engineers were optimizing for cost. A German car might have a more advanced engine, but if that engine required specialized tools, expensive parts, and dealer-only service, was it really better? For the engineer, yes. For the accountant, that's a harder question. Toyota saw the car as a product that needed to serve the customer's entire ownership experience: purchase price, fuel economy, reliability, resale value, total cost of ownership. German brands saw the car as a statement, an experience, a demonstration of what's possible. Both valid, both successful in their own ways, but one was designed for long-term profit, the other was designed for prestige. By the early 2000s, Volkswagen Group had a vision, not just to compete with Toyota, to surpass them, to become the largest automaker in the world. They called it Strategy 2018. The plan was aggressive: acquire brands, expand globally, invest in new technology, dominate every segment. From budget cars to luxury supercars, Skoda to Lamborghini, all under one roof. On paper, it made sense. Scale creates efficiency, shared platforms reduce costs, a diverse portfolio spreads risk. But scale also creates complexity, and complexity creates vulnerability. Volkswagen Group grew to 12 brands, each with its own identity, its own engineering teams, its own requirements. Coordinating that empire required massive bureaucracy. Decisions slowed, costs ballooned. The agility that had once defined German engineering began to fade. Meanwhile, Toyota stayed focused: fewer brands, tighter control, simpler structure. When the 2008 financial crisis hit, the difference became clear. Toyota had cash reserves, conservative debt, flexible production. They weathered the storm without government bailouts. Volkswagen survived, but barely. The expansion had stretched them thin. They had built an empire, but empires are expensive to maintain. In 2015, researchers discovered something troubling. Volkswagen diesel engines were emitting far more nitrogen oxides than allowed. Not slightly more, up to 40 times more. But not during official tests, only on real roads. The cars had been programmed to detect when they were being tested. In test mode, they ran clean. In normal driving, they prioritized performance and fuel economy over emissions. It was a cheat, a deliberate, systematic cheat, and it wasn't limited to one model or one market: 11 million vehicles worldwide. The fallout was catastrophic: $30 billion in fines and settlements, criminal charges, executives imprisoned, brand reputation shattered. But the deeper question is why? Why would a company with Volkswagen's resources, its engineering talent, its reputation, resort to cheating? The answer lies in the trap they'd built for themselves. Volkswagen had promised diesel engines that were clean, powerful, and efficient, all three, simultaneously. In America, where emission standards were strictest, this was nearly impossible with existing technology. They had two choices: admit the technology wasn't ready, or find a shortcut. They chose the shortcut because they'd already made promises to customers, to dealers, to investors. They'd positioned diesel as the future. Clean diesel, the solution to emissions and efficiency. Backing down would mean admitting failure, losing market share, damaging the brand. So they cheated. Compare this to Toyota's approach. When Toyota couldn't meet a standard cleanly, they didn't cheat. They pivoted. They invested in hybrid technology. The Prius was never glamorous. It was mocked even, but it worked. It was honest, and it positioned Toyota perfectly for the future. Dieselgate was never just about emissions. It was about the danger of overcommitting, of promising what you can't deliver, of letting ambition override judgment. Today, the automotive industry is undergoing its biggest transformation in a century. Internal combustion engines are being phased out. Electric vehicles are rising. Software is becoming as important as hardware. This shift rewards companies that can adapt quickly. Japanese automakers, especially Toyota, were initially cautious about full electrification. They invested heavily in hybrids and explored hydrogen fuel cells, unconvinced that batteries were ready for mass adoption. Critics called them slow and out of touch, but Toyota's caution was strategic. They watched competitors rush into EVs, spend billions on new platforms and factories, and then struggle as battery costs rose, infrastructure lagged, and demand proved uncertain. Toyota waited. They refined hybrids, delivering immediate emissions reductions without new infrastructure. They developed solid-state batteries quietly. Most importantly, they preserved flexibility. German manufacturers took a different path. Volkswagen alone committed around $80 billion to electrification. Bold, yes, but risky. EVs are mechanically simpler, with fewer parts and less room for traditional engineering differentiation. The advantage shifts to batteries and software, areas where legacy strengths matter less. Here's the irony. German automakers pursued excellence so intensely that it became a trap. Once you're known for building the best, good enough feels like failure. Complexity rises, costs increase, margins shrink. Toyota avoided this by never claiming to build the best cars, only the most reliable, efficient, and valuable. Those promises are easier to keep. A basic Toyota meets expectations. A basic German car invites disappointment. Prestige becomes a burden. This isn't about cheap versus expensive or Japan versus Germany. It's about knowing which game you're playing. Toyota played the long game. Patience, discipline, incremental improvement, profits over prestige. German automakers played for ambition, innovation, and legacy. Both strategies worked until the market changed. The lesson goes beyond cars. Success creates rigidity. What makes you great can blind you to what comes next. Toyota built wealth by consistency and restraint. German automakers built legacy through risk and vision. Neither is wrong. But in business, timing matters. You have to stay solvent long enough to be proven right. Sometimes wealth and legacy align, often they don't.